Good afternoon and thank you all for joining us in this edition of Business Today. It's the 16th of January 2017. My name is Doreen Biira, and on the show today we're going to be giving you the latest business updates, but also a look at what's making top headlines around the country. Of course, we know the voter listing started today. This is a 30-day exercise that is going to be ongoing. Seems to have started off on a slow note, but hopefully it's going to pick up over the coming days. And also we do have that update on pump prices. Now, while diesel could have gone down by about 2 shillings, we are seeing petrol that has actually gone up by $1.81. But in regard to voter listing, we are going to be crossing over to Mombasa, where our reporter Francis Ontoma is going to be giving us the latest on how the exercise could have started off, and well, just the business angle, the business aspect to all of this voter listing. Francis Ontoma is going to be giving us that bit, and we'll also be taking a look at what's happening in regard to state security. Of course, we have seen the latest state security vehicles that have been brought into the country, and that was actually launched by President Uhuru Kenyatta. What does this mean for the country? And that is in regard to resource allocation. We're going to be having an update on that. Let's start by taking a look at our Twitter poll question this afternoon, where we're asking, does the caliber of leaders in a nation determine its economic performance? You can either say yes or you can vote no. That is on our Twitter poll question. Or you can use the hashtag Business Today, and you can get to me using the Twitter handle at Doreen Biira or at KTN News. Would like to hear your thoughts on this. And to begin with, the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, IEBC, has officially launched the mass voter registration exercise. The exercise took off to a slow start, with many registering low numbers on the first day. Well, now we are joined by our reporter, Francis Ontoma, who is going to now give us an update on what exactly is happening in Mombasa, of course, which happens to be the county 001. Good afternoon, Francis, and thank you so much for joining us.
Well, good afternoon, Joy.
Well, there's quite a bit that is happening around the country, but of key interest is, of course, the voter listing or voter registration. Give us an update on what it is like in Mombasa today.
Well, the exercise in Mombasa has begun with a lot of enthusiasm. We've seen people coming out in quite encouraging numbers to go to various registration centers to register for the elections of August. But then largely there have been hitches here and there, and of course a low turnout in some of the registration centers. Largely at some of the centers that have recorded hitches, what they are actually lamenting, or rather saying is a huge letdown, is a question of the power backup systems, which are actually messy, and that has caused the whole process, actually delaying the process at some areas. Mm-hmm. But largely there seems to be some enthusiasm this time around. Cost is a huge area in terms of focus as regards the numbers that will, of course, build up the election of the presidential election, especially in August. And therefore, focus is on cost. Many people have actually been encouraged to come out. We've seen leaders across the board from all sides of the coalitions coming out to boldly ask their supporters to come out and register for this particular exercise. And therefore, this time around, there seems to be an air of optimism that actually the numbers may actually be better than it was in the last exercise, Joy.
All right, Francis, if I might, you just mentioned that there have been power outages, and so the lack of backup is one of the hitches that you are looking at today. But what are the officers there carrying out the exercise saying about what the alternative is?
Well, little discussion actually on the alternative, but we've seen efforts by IEBC officials trying to really put things in place. We've seen them actually trying to connect power from nearby institutions and schools, actually making the entire process start running. And therefore, we've seen some goodwill, of course, also from the community that this process has to kick off. There were hitches, especially at Bandari College, but we have reports actually that has been sorted, and the process has now kicked off. And various other places that had problems, we understand that the process is going on. Joy, perhaps to bring in a very interesting perspective this time around, why perhaps we expect the numbers to be better this time around in cost. There was a huge problem, or rather a huge bother of the Mombasa Republican Council threat in the last general election.
Right.
And this really affected the numbers, especially at South Coast. And this time around, it's not a problem anymore because even the top brass of this particular council came out to encourage, to say that they will be rallying their people, their supporters, to be able to participate in these elections. Therefore, that is actually one of the biggest factors that can tell you that the numbers are looking up bright this time around.
All right, well, thank you so much, Francis. KTN's Francis Ontoma, giving us an update from Mombasa regarding voter listing or voter registration. Away from that, President Uhuru Kenyatta has officially launched police vehicle leasing program, the event that took place at Uhuru Park this afternoon, of over 500 police vehicles distributed to various police formations. 25 of the vehicles were mine resistance and ambush protection. And speaking during the event, the president vowed to crack down on insecurity around the country.
Which no doubt is an imperative for sustainable socio-economic development. When my administration came into office 4 years ago, our country was facing serious security challenges emanating from terrorism and other forms of organized crime, which required innovative ways to tackle. One of the glaring gaps was the lack of means of transport that hampered the effectiveness of the police. In fact, in 2013, the National Police Service had in its strength only 3,155 vehicles nationwide, most of which were in a state of disrepair. This sorry state of affairs meant that our police officers could not effectively execute their mandate of keeping this country safe and secure. To deal with this problem, I adopted the National Police Vehicle Leasing Program and acquired under the first phase 1,200 vehicles. We received an additional 1,000 vehicles under the second phase, and today we have received another 500 vehicles, which brings the total number of vehicles purchased under this scheme to 2,720. The total number of different types in use by the police in terms of vehicles will now stand at 5,875. And whereas I appreciate that this is not yet enough, significantly improved mobility today means that our officers across the country are able to respond faster to distress calls, and the result is that the public feels safer because of the enhanced police presence in every corner of our country. Today is not an end, but just a continuation, for we intend to ensure that we have enough vehicles to satisfy the security needs of our country. To better fight all forms of organized crime, including terrorism, we recognize that our police men and women required specialized equipment also. In 2013, all specialized police equipment were in a state of disrepair, which exposed our police men and women serving in difficult corners of our country to danger. As a result, my administration procured 30 armored personnel carriers, which has improved police capability and response. We have also procured an additional 25 mine-resistant armored personnel carriers that will be deployed in regions of Kenya that require such equipment.
And that's President Uhuru Kenyatta giving an update on the latest equipment, among them vehicles. Now, we are joined by Shadrach Miti, who has been covering this specific story. Shadrach, if you might, would you be able to tell us what the specification of this specialized equipment is?
Thank you very much, Doreen. Indeed, as you've mentioned, what the President did a while ago was to launch the third phase of the National Police Service Vehicle Leasing Program, where a total of 500 vehicles, assorted vehicles, were brought in and launched here at Uhuru Park with a view to enhancing security. Now, among those vehicles, we had several saloon cars, pickups, and even lorries. But more to that was the unveiling of about 25 mine resistance and ambush protective vehicles, which are basically meant to take care of police officers operating in areas where terror and organized crimes seem to have been taken a notch higher, where maybe police officers have had to deal with situations where landmines and even bombs have been buried on the ground, so that these kind of vehicles are there to take care of such. And remember, apart from that, the entire fleet of 500 vehicles was specifically aimed at ensuring mobility of police officers and to enhance quick response in whatever situation that comes up as insofar as insecurity issue is concerned. Remember, in the past years, one of the issues that has dogged the police service has been the cry by the public that the police are never so quick to respond on whatever situation, wherever they are called upon. But this time round, the President says that by unveiling this phase 3 of the National Police Service Leasing Program vehicles is aimed at ensuring that police are always everywhere and almost visible and present in whatever situation, in whatever area, for as long as they are called upon and for as long as the alert is there. Remember, in 2013, according to what the statistics the President gave us here, the National Police Service had about 3,555 vehicles. But in between, owing to the ongoing program of leasing police vehicles, the government has been able to procure about 2,720 vehicles, divided in 3 phases, where we had the first phase bringing in about 1,200 vehicles. The second phase, we had 1,020 vehicles. And today, the President launched another 500 vehicles. So this one, even as we look at it, remember, as the President was launching this, he went ahead and enumerated the gains the police have made insofar as dealing with organized crime is concerned. And remember, one of the issues that has been affecting this country, particularly the business environment, was the issue of insecurity, where police have been blamed of not securing the entire business community, and thus making the business environment in this country not that promising and not that attractive. But going by what the President said, and even bringing in what the Cabinet Secretary for Interior, Joseph Nkaissery, said, that the government seeks to ensure that the government seeks to ensure that the security operation and observance is undertaken 24 hours every time. It is seeking to ensure that the business environment is stabilized, and that whoever does any business, wherever you are, wherever is, and whatever thing is doing, for as long as it's within the law, then is protected and sure of going ahead with this activity. So those are some of the things that we were able to gather from you, although there were several others, but we will be looking at them particularly in our later bulletin. Doreen.
Well, thank you so much, Shadrach. And what better way to protect the environment and the business environment that is particularly than by providing a stable nation, and part of it is through security. Now, motorists stand to be hit hard at the pump yet again as fuel prices went up in the latest price reviews by the Energy Regulatory Commission. A litre of super petrol has increased by $1.81 and will now retail at 96 shillings and 1 cent. Diesel and kerosene users were spared as prices registered marginal drops, while diesel dropped by 2 shillings and 99 cents to now sell at 84 shillings and 23 cents. Kerosene decreased by only 12 cents to now retail at 63 shillings and 44 cents. The changes in this month's prices were a consequence of the average landed cost of imported super petrol increasing from $503.93 per ton in November of 2016 to $530.24 per ton in December of 2016. And the average landed cost of diesel decreased from $478.11 per ton to about $446.84 per ton, while that of kerosene decreased from $500.45 per ton to about $487.91 per ton. Over the same period, the mean monthly US dollar to Kenya shilling exchange rate remained fairly stable at 102 shillings and 41 cents to the US dollar in December of 2016 compared to 101 shillings and 86 cents to the US dollar in the same month of November. With impending elections in August, consumer goods prices are projected to skyrocket as inflationary pressures also kick in. And at close of the week's trading last week, the Nairobi Securities Exchange 20-share index fell below 3,000-point mark for the first time in nearly a decade, shedding 5.36% of its value over the week to stand at 2,971.10 points, and this on the back of depressed economic activity coupled with a looming election and, of course, slow economic performance at the start of the year.
168.11 points over the week flirted with levels such as this was in the wake of post-election violence in 2008. The benchmark NSE 20-share index lost 5.36% during the week to stand at 2,971.10 points. The all-share index ended last week 5.82 points or 4.49% lower to stand at 123.94, while the NSE 25-share index dropped 196.44 points or about 5.74% during the week to settle at 3,228.69 points. The sharp fall has been attributed to the consistent fall in share prices of listed companies with large market capitalization. Despite being the biggest mover on the counters, Safaricom, that traded 83.6 million shares last week at 18 shillings and 80 cents, is said to have lost 0.3%. While the declining share price and the fall of the index may not really be indicative of company financial health or business performance, it is an indicator of the negative investor sentiment, outlook, and confidence in the performance of the Kenyan economy going forward. For listed companies, the market continues to remain choppy as investors become agey with political temperatures rising. The market has also witnessed decreased activity with fewer and fewer deals being seen consistently. Analysts say that as a barometer of the rest of the economy, a depressed market reflects economic performance over the last 2 years as some listed companies issued profit warnings, downsized their staff, while others sold off and exited the Kenyan market. The market is reported to have lost 47% of its value over the last 2 years. In 2016, the stock exchange dealt a blow to investors as it shed 120 billion shillings from their wealth. This year being an election year, investors are taking a very conservative position while others adopt a wait-and-see attitude. Others have adopted the tactical cat-and-go approach, choosing to cut their losses and run. Analysts, however, argue that a low 20-share index is not entirely negative as a bearish market always attracts bottom feeders who will buy low and wait to exit higher in the longer to medium term. Doreen Biira, KTN News.
County governments and coffee sector players have been called upon to help small-scale coffee farmers to improve their coffee yields from the current 4 kilograms per coffee bush to a minimum of 10 kilograms per bush if Kenya is to meet the current high demand from the world market. KTN's Philip Keitany has more.
Coffee production in Kenya has fallen drastically over the last 30 years, from 130 million metric tons to less than 60,000 tons in 2016. This has largely been attributed to a lack of agricultural training systems or extension services and a weak public sector support of the industry, especially in terms of material input such as seedlings and fertilizer.
One of the biggest problems for coffee farmers today is the inefficiencies around governance within their respective cooperatives. Because each time they elect leaders, these leaders are not transparent enough, they are not professional, and many times they carry baggage that eventually goes back to the farmer. They will borrow loans, for example, and not apply those loans to value process that increases the value to the farmer. Many times, the loans they take actually reduces the value of the farmer. According to Changwony, the contribution of coffee into the Kenyan economy's well-being cannot be wished away, considering it touches the lives of about 1/8 of the country's population. Hence, the need to help farmers improve their current productivity per coffee bush, which currently stand at 4 kilograms per coffee bush, and need to be improved to a minimum of 10 kilograms per coffee bush. Because the majority of our farmers are doing about 5 kilos, 3 kilos per bush. And yet research has taken us to potential of 40 kilos. So I think this is a critical area. We need to invest more on technical extension service to educate farmers who are on traditional coffee plants to begin crafting them into either Wiru 11 or replacing them altogether with Batian, which is the latest in the market. According to the International Coffee Organization, Kenya has continued to record a steady decline in production as average production since 2014-2015 fell below 800,000 bags compared to 1.5 million bags from 1970-1971 to 1999-2000 crop years. Let's appreciate that coffee has actually, the last 3 years, has enjoyed very good prices. It was driven by what happened in Brazil the last 2 years. Brazil more or less faced one of the most serious droughts ever. It had a very weak currency, so naturally drove prices globally into very, very high levels, and that has supported industry the last 3 years. Coffee farmers earned more than 23 billion shillings in 2015-2016 coffee year from a total production of 45,000 metric tons, up from 22.3 billion shillings achieved in 2014-2015. Changwony, however, insists that these earnings could be doubled if the farmers are provided with good coffee varieties and extension services. Philip Keitany, KTN News.
Thanks, Philip. Cashew nuts still remain one of the most popular crops in the coast region. For years, the value of this crop has, however, been dwindling. And Tobias Chanji now reports from Kwale County on how cashew nut farmers have given up hope and resorted to uprooting the same trees. All right, for quite some time now, there has been a saying that as an economy progresses, so does the real estate, boom. But then towards the end of last year, the same could not be said about the Kenyan real estate sector. But just to put into perspective what 2017 might look like in regard to property and real estate, KTN's Abiagina spoke to one of the players in the real estate sector.
A number of analysts have predicted that 2017 we might experience a slowdown in the uptake of property. Joining me right now is Abraham Muredi, who is the general manager for PRC, a property real estate company, and he'll be talking to us on this particular matter. Thank you for making time.
Thank you for having me.
Of course, 2017 still fresh. Many Kenyans looking forward to their resolutions, some saying they want to buy land, others want to build. Perhaps what's in the horizon for 2017 from where you sit?
I think 2017 is the right time to buy property because there's a perception that there's politics and stuff. So what normally happens is then the prices normally tend to even come out a little bit slightly lower as people want to liquidate. So it's the right time to buy property. Yes.
Perhaps as you say this, of course, there's also the feeling and perception that right now it's better to wait till elections are over than consider maybe buying. Because I was actually looking at a report that was indicating that some investors might take a wait-and-see approach. How do we convince these people? And other than convincing them, what are the realities on the ground?
Land, thank you very much. Land normally appreciates in value. So in such a commodity, the best thing to do is to buy and wait, not wait and buy. Land will always be there. I mean, whichever new government takes charge, the land will still be there. The land registry will still be valid. So your assets will still be intact. And by the time people are coming back out, you'll have invested at a very good price. Yes.
And as a company, looking at this particular year, what are some of the forecasts you have in terms of uptake of products that you are doing, and also how will this shape your outlook for 2017?
Well, in 2017, PRC has decided to grow out of its mold. We are going to be doing a lot more land, a lot more affordable property, just like we do, genuine affordable property. So that's the main goal. We're also going to get into housing. For the first time, we are going to bring you houses that are affordable, that are for our kind of people, not very expensive, very affordable, a property that you'll always look back and be happy that you bought. Thirdly, we're also into agriculture. You're doing kilimo biashara. It's picking up really well. We've already set up the mechanisms and the structures to make it happen. So this is going to be a year of actually earning from our investments. And as usual, again, we'll do the plot. The concert, yes.
So where is the demand really coming from, especially now that we're seeing a lot of the middle class want to own a piece of property somewhere in the country? Where do you see demand going in this year?
Well, demand on property is normally affected by three things, according to a research we did the other day, which we launched. Basically, people look at location, they look at infrastructure, and they look at the cost. So depending on the interplay between these three, for example, if you're in a place and you know that they're building a tarmac road, for example, you know the price will appreciate. You know we've now devolved our country and we have various counties. These counties have created a new life wherever they've gone. So if you can position yourself there, you're going to reap the benefits. So the way I see it, yes, there's politics. That's a good thing. It's part of our country's cycle. But then there's the investors. There's always an interplay. So it's every year for me is a time to invest. And they say you invest when the market is right. And this is when the market is right. When everyone else is looking away, this is when you buy. Yes.
What sort of percentages should we look at in terms of appreciation of property this year?
Well, on the past, we've had appreciations. According to our research, again, we had places like Rwaka that went 181%. Normally, in an election year, things tend to slow down. Not necessarily because of politics, but because the business people themselves, as you say, have this idea, let me wait and see, and everyone else gets the call. Because, investment is more a psyche. I do not see it growing very fast, but there's going to be a hit back when now the elections are done and everything turns out okay, which is what we always pray and hope for this country. The values will now restore themselves. Even if they don't grow as much, the next time they'll grow much faster. Yes.
And finally, Muredi, with interest rates being capped at 14%,
yes.
following the passage of that law.
Yes.
Should you also expect more people to take up property via loans?
Yes.
Or what trends do you foresee in 2017? Cash buyout, cash buys, or credit-driven buys?
Okay, basically, according to the Banking Act, there is risk weight all borrowing. Now, land is perceived as a very good collateral. So every bank will want someone with land. So if you want to go and borrow to buy land, the banks will be more inclined to lend to you because you have a secured loan at the 14 than lend to a person who's unsecured at 14. So you have an advantage there. But then our properties, again, our prices are between 250 to about 500. So normally people have various ways to buy. People will not normally go to the banks because of the charging process, and it's a long, tedious. So they'll go to SACCOs, they'll go to friends, they'll go to savings. Some come and they pay 30% and they give them a 6-month grace period. So basically the capping of interest rates has not quite caught up with us yet. And again, even if it were to borrow, people would never hesitate to borrow to buy property. I think it's one of the best investments you can have.
Of course, one of the best and also pretty risky in the event that you buy land where it's been sold already.
Yes, then there's been that, but we appreciate what the government is trying to do to digitize the registries. We know the other day the CS actually replaced almost all land boards in a bid to get it clearer. But if you don't want to be affected by these conmen, come to PRC. We are here to stay. We give you affordable and genuine property.
Well, many thanks there, Abraham Muridi,
Yes.
General Manager.
Thank you very much.
Looking forward to what the year has to offer.
Thank you.
In this particular hotly anticipated election year.
Well, there you go, and I hope that can actually give you an idea of the kind of year 2017 is going to be. I mean, the beginning of the year hasn't really been as pretty as everyone would actually think it would be, especially being the fact that it's an election year. There's a lot of cat and go and wait and see approaches that are being taken by investors at the moment. We kicked off the year and the shilling was actually at one of its lowest in, I guess, 15 months. That was when it hit 104 to the dollar. And then when you look at how the NSE, or the Nairobi Securities Exchange, is performing, we've also seen the NSE 20 share index go below 3,000 points, which is not exactly a good thing. The last time we saw this happen was, I think, at the beginning of 2008, and that was during the post-election violence. So there's something about elections and the investor, wait-and-see approach that does affect the economic performance of a nation like Kenya. But now, away from that, we'd like to remind you of our Twitter poll question, which is, well, sort of related to what I just said. Does the caliber of leaders in a nation determine its economic performance? The hashtag to use is Business Today. My Twitter handle at Doreen Biira and at KTN News. Let's take a look at 2 or 3 tweets before we can move on. Stephen, or at SVETS M1, you're saying, yes, it does. Kenya development has been hampered by corrupt impunity and greedy leaders that steal taxes meant for development. And we have Majani Chasia, who is saying, comparing Kenya, Tanzania and Rwanda is a classic example of the type of leadership and economic impact. And we're having Michael Kanania, who is saying, politics affects societal progress. A society that gets its politics right is on course to a safe future. And well, let's now take a look at other stories making headlines around the country in business. The continued drought in most parts of the country is now a threat to the survival of one of Kenya's oldest irrigation schemes. The Perkera irrigation scheme in Baringo County is one of them. This as conflict between farmers in the scheme and the pastoral community living around the scheme intensifies over the use of water from the Perkera River. On this week's edition of The Next Frontier, Philip Keitanya visits the region and brings us this report.
The continued drought across the country has created an acute water shortage, and in livestock-dependent areas has forced herders to follow the water upstream as rivers dry up. Increasingly, This is occasioning conflict between pastoral and crop farmers as livestock invade farming areas. It is this pattern that is playing out in Baringo County as pastoral communities and farmers who both depend on the Perkera River clash over whether to leave river water to roaming animals or leave it for irrigation.
Kulingana na faida hasa sisi wakulima tunapanda Perkera, nikiangalia muda mwaka wa 2003 pengine changamoto ya wakati huo si kama saizi. Vile tunaenda unaona wakulima wa 203 na kuja pande ile walikuwa na maji, pengine watu walikuwa mahifadhi msitu kidogo ndio maji ilikuwa inateremka, lakini kwa sasa kutoka 2010 tumekuwa na changamoto sana ya maji ambaye inabidi mpaka unapanda tu crop moja peke yake na pengine uko na mwanafunzi ama ya school fees, so unakuta mkulima atasalipa school fees, mara zingine tunapanda shamba inapotea, unabaki na madeni.
With little pasture, difficult access to water and long distance to travel, sometimes across farmers' land to reach grass or water, herders' work become more labor intensive. But in order to reduce competition for water, local people, together with the National Irrigation Board, have advised farmers to fence off their farms as they work on restoring dams across the county.
We are hoping to have a mega project in Radat that is going to dam millions and millions of liters of water that will be used to irrigate the lower side of the county. Beyond that, we have new dams that we are planning in Berege, in the North Baringo, and several other dams that are going to happen along the Kerio Valley Belt. And on the other side of Aldama Ravine, with the support of the national government and donors, we shall be able to build bigger dams.
For these farmers, the poor rains and the damage caused by pastoralist herds have now made farming an unreliable source of income. For government, it is a case of being caught between a rock and a hard place, a real catch-22 situation. Villagers need water to meet their domestic needs, while pastoralists are constantly in search of grazing land and water for their livestock. Meanwhile, smallholder agriculturalists need irrigation water to grow their crops.
So challenge kubwa ile tuko nayo hapa. These canals, they are supposed to supply water to 5,000 acres. But right now, you cannot even serve these 15 acres. It's only 15 acres, but you see the challenge farmers are facing. Kwa hivyo mimi nafikiri kuna dam ilikuwa tumepropose ya Radat na serikali ilikuwa imewekesha pesa, lakini hawajaingilia kati kutafuta ground ambayo ni ya serikali ya kuweka hiyo dam. Sasa kuna futa ni kufute ambayo inafanya sisi watu ya nyanda za chini kuumia na kupoteza mimea ambayo inalisha hata wenzetu wale bado wanafutana.
All right, we do apologize for that. But now let's take a look at other stories. For the first time in 225 years, America's Lady Liberty coin will be portrayed as a black woman. The coin demonstrates America's roots in the past through traditional elements and is expected to be released in April of 2017. And we'll be bringing you that story just shortly. But let's take a look at our Twitter poll question where we're asking, does the caliber of leaders in a nation determine its economic performance? And let's take a look at some of your feedback here. Aku, or at Tor Nyaik, is saying very much so. Leaders should create a system that promotes creativity and entrepreneurship, no handouts. And we're having one coming in from Looney Jack 2, who is saying they determine the investors who come into a country. Warren Chris Bulime is saying absolutely 100% they do determine economic performance. The insight a leader has plays a greater role for the economy. And Leo Kinuthia is saying poor leaders cannot bring any form of growth. They are a liability. And we're having Owiti, who is saying, well, you're asking a question. And Gilbert Ketchem, you're saying break this ambiguity. caliber? What exactly do you mean? Well, those are some of your views coming through the hashtag Business Today and the Twitter handle at KTN News. But let's revisit that story where for the first time in 225 years, America's Lady Liberty coin will be portrayed as a black woman. The coin demonstrates America's roots in the past through traditional elements and is also expected to be released just a few months from today. In fact, it's in April of 2017.
The United States Mint has unveiled a $100 gold coin featuring an African-American woman as the face of Lady Liberty for the first time in the history of U.S. currency. The 24-karat gold coin, which marks the Mint's 225th anniversary, was debuted on Thursday in the Department of the Treasury cash room in Washington, D.C. According to the Mint's Principal Deputy Director, Rhett Jepson, this is the first series of gold coins featuring Lady Liberty, which has been used as an American coinage since the late 1790s as an ethnic woman. He further added that upcoming editions will use designs representing Asian, Hispanic Americans and others to reflect the cultural and ethnic diversity of the United States. The coin's head side, designed by artist Justin Carnes, depicts the profile of Liberty wearing a crown of stars with the inscriptions Liberty, 1792, 2017 and In God We Trust. Depicted on the reverse side, which was designed by Chris Costello, is an image of an eagle in flight. The inscription on the tail side include the nation's motto, out of many, one. Sculpted by Phoebe Hemphill and Michael Gaudiuso, the initial coin is set to be released on 6th of April and will be issued every 2 years. Ashley Mazuri, KTN News.
But what do we say? That's history in the making. I do not know if Donald Trump or President-elect Donald Trump will have a view on this one, considering she's now being portrayed as black. Let's now take a look at what's happening in Zambia. And Zambia's economy has been growing at a sluggish rate, averaging 3% per annum since copper prices dipped 2 years ago. The cost of living and doing business has been soaring in the process as the country faces economic challenges after the government cut fuel subsidies last year, causing a 39% price hike in petroleum.
Rising food and transport costs have made life difficult for many Zambians in recent months as the country experiences the effects of a drop in demand for copper that has in turn left the economy struggling. Zambia is known as Africa's second biggest producer of copper, which is a mainstay of its economy. But with prices near 6-year lows, mining companies have been forced to close mines and cut thousands of jobs. Zambia's currency, the kwacha, fell more than 2% in value in August. As data showed, China's demand for copper had slumped 14% in July last year. In addition to the country's economic woes, in October, Zambia hiked retail price of petrol near 39%, while diesel went up by 33%. According to a bakery owner, Lilian Kauma, it's becoming difficult to keep the business running as customers are buying less bread, while production costs increased after the fuel price hike last year.
The fuel increase in the food production has affected us in so many ways because we have to buy our flour from millers, who also buy grains from farmers, who use farming equipment which usually use fuel. So the cost of production is high. At the end of the day, they pass it on to the people who buy flour from them.
Zambia spent more than $200 million on fuel subsidies between January and September of 2016. As a result, the IMF wants the country to reduce subsidies as part of an aid package of around $1.2 billion currently being negotiated.
The cost of living in Zambia has actually risen so high that usually I find myself spending more than 50% of my income just to travel to and from work. And also the fact that in 2017 there's an anticipated increase in the electricity tariff.
Adding to the woes, the country has been hit hard over the past year by a drought that has wilted crops and driven food prices higher. Low levels of the Kariba Dam have also meant power shortages have been frequent. Power is mostly produced through hydroelectric generation at the dam, supplying electricity to the parts of the Copper Belt where mining companies are situated.
The logistical cost of doing government business will go up, roughly equivalent to the price increase. And this will be a permanent change in the cost. So the government has to figure out how to reduce its spending because of the price hike, among other things.
Zambia's struggling economy is forecast to pick up this year as copper prices recover and inflation slows sharply, giving the central bank room to cut interest rates. Ashley Mazuri, KTN News.
And that story brings us to the end of our business show this afternoon, but let's wind up by taking a look at a Twitter poll question where we asked, does the caliber of leaders in a nation determine its economic performance? On a yes or no Twitter poll that we posed to you, 90% of the respondents said yes, and 10% of the respondents said no. I'll just take two last views right here in regard to that Twitter poll question. Tobias Kemoy, you're saying our leaders are creating monopolies and creating microeconomies. And Martin Odhiambo, you're saying yes, economic development in any given country depends on the policies made by the leaders. Those are some of your views coming through, of course, in addition to some of those that I read earlier. Thank you all so much for watching this edition of Business Today. My name is Doreen Biira. Coming up next is Worldview, and later we'll be having the news in Swahili.